Rosebrough, and this is Rediscover. Today I'm going to be talking about the end of online dating. I'll tell you the last two stories and why I decided to end it. Stay tuned. This is Mary Beth Rosebrough, and this is my podcast, Rediscover. Today I promise to talk to you about the end of online dating. So what happened was a couple of interesting experiences that just put me over the top. So the last thing that happened was, well, I guess the second to last thing was I was dating somebody that I thought seemed like a really good guy, really, like a good catch. And he had a job, he had a house, he had a car, he didn't live with his mother. She didn't live with him, and she lived about a mile away, which will be something that we'll need to refer to later in the story. Anyway, so I only saw him, I think, 1, 2, 3 times in the month that I was seeing him. So the first time was the only time that the date actually went as planned. We made a date, and I was impressed because when I first connected with him online, then he pretty much immediately said, "Would you like to meet me for lunch?" Okay, yeah, in a couple days. So that was impressive. So I'm like, great, okay. So that was really, though, the only date that ever went off the way it was planned. After that, the next date, we were supposed to meet for dinner, I think around 6 or 7, I can't remember. For some reason, which I was never told why, he wasn't able to show up until 9 o'clock that night, and the restaurant closed at 10. So that was okay. That, whatever, give somebody the benefit of the doubt. But that night, after dinner, when we were in the parking lot, one odd thing that happened was that he didn't really want a good night kiss. It was weird. It was an awkward situation. So I've never been on a date where somebody didn't try to kiss me goodnight. And some guys, of course, try to kiss too much. And think I had to stop that in its tracks. But he didn't seem to really want anything at all. There was some kind of like I kind of looked at him, and there was kind of he was a lot taller than I was. So I kind of looked up at him, and there was kind of this little pop kiss. And then he was like, okay, all right, well, that's enough of that. Really? Because most people want more, most guys want more. So I thought that was a little odd. So I think actually that night when he texted me and said he had a good time, I texted him and said, I don't know what was up, but with that, that good night kiss, I said it in a more diplomatic way, but he wrote back, oh, I want more of that. I'm like, okay, well, maybe he was just feeling awkward. So then the next time I was supposed to meet him, that got changed 4 times. One of those times, I'll admit, was because I had family in town, but the other 3 times were because of him. And so then on the 4th date that we were, the 4th, it was the 4th, it was the 3rd date, but the 4th time we had changed it to that day was a Saturday night. I'm at the hairdresser getting my hair done, and 2 hours before we're supposed to meet, he texts me and cancels. Doesn't tell me why. He just said, I'll call you later. Of course, he didn't call me later. So later on that night, after not hearing from him, I said, are you going to ever tell me what happened? And then he wrote back, there was a death in the family. Maybe. I'm not sure about that. So, he had been kind of flaky in his communication with me, had not been really reliable. He would say he would call and he didn't call, or he would tell me later. He didn't tell me. Finally, he came over to my house maybe like Tuesday after that. And then and of course, he was really, really late, like hours late. So then he said, well, I can see you again tomorrow. Okay. We had talked on the phone a couple times in between. So, and so he texted me that morning that he was supposed to come over that next day. Like, so that would have been a Wednesday. He texted me and said, good morning, which his good mornings were always very generic. And I think sometimes guys send out generic good mornings to all the women that they're seeing, which I had asked him about. And I had told him at one point that your behavior is what guys who are married or have girlfriends seem to do. Now, as far as I know, I never dated a married guy, but I've heard from my friends that's what it's like. And I'm assuming that I probably did date unknowingly some guys that probably had girlfriends or at least other serious dates. So anyway, he continued to be kind of like flaky, like telling me he was available, but then never making plans or not being available till some weird, like I said, like 9 o'clock at night for dinner for an hour, like, okay. So he texted me that good morning text, that generic good morning text, no name to me, like not good morning, Mary Beth or anything, just good morning. And then I would text back good morning and I wouldn't hear from him anymore. So, and that happened several times up till then. Okay. So then about an hour later, I get a text that said, I think maybe we should change tomorrow or tonight's dinner till tomorrow, because I'm not sure when I'm going to get back. Because all this was happening in a small town about 40 minutes away from where we live. So 40 minutes is not, okay, we're not talking about an hour and a half away. We're talking 40 minutes, big deal. To get to the next major city where people work and where they hang out for entertainment is an hour away, and people drive down there all the time. So 40 minutes drive in Florida is not a big deal. Oops, sorry, did I just mentioned where I live? If you haven't figured it out, it's in Florida. Anyway, so by this time, I'm kind of fed up with this behavior of his. It's canceling, not communicating, not really telling me what's happening, never apologizing. He never apologized for not showing up that Saturday and for canceling. He never apologized for that. He just told me, well, I've had a death in the family and that's it. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, that's sad, but you can still show some consideration for what the other person, got canceled on, what that was like, because he had moved that date 4 times and then didn't show up. So he was not very considerate of my time or the plans I had made in order to work it out so I could see him. Everything basically was on his time schedule. And so I was just done with that. So I said, if you're moving the dinner to, if you want to move the dinner, you and I need to have a talk. So then I told him that, I wasn't really happy with the way things were going, but he talked me into continuing to see him again, which I never actually did, but he kind of kept me on the line. So he didn't come over and he said he would move it till Friday. Well, Friday came along and that never happened. And then Saturday came along and that didn't happen either. And so he was always saying things like to me, I just, I'm going through a lot. I wish you understood that. I feel like it's all about you. Okay. It's not all about me. I just need a little communication and a little responsibility here, a little, keeping to the plans. And I said to him that what was going on was exactly what I was trying to prevent by what I put in my profile, which was, I'm just looking for a man who understands that he's not the only one in the room. Meaning somebody who has consideration for other people and other people's lives and their plans and their time and everything that goes on with somebody else, not just, it can't just be according to your schedule and your whim, which is how so many guys that I found online run their lives. Anyway, so I wrote him that and he never answered me. But remember, he was the one that had talked to me or had texted me and tried to keep me, going out with him. Because this was about the second time I tried to break it off with him because he was just like too flaky and whatever. So then finally, let's see, right before that, I think the last thing that he ever wrote me that was like normal was saying that, that he would call me or text me when he got home from taking his mom home. His mom lived less than a mile away from him, maybe a mile away. He didn't text me for 2 hours, and only after I had texted him and was like, are you home yet? So, so that was pretty flaky. And also, at one point, the last time I was supposed to see him, he said that, or that night when he wanted to move the dinner, and I was putting up like barriers about that. He said, okay, well, I want to do this because I don't know if I can get there till 6 or 7 or 8. And I'm like, so I thought I'm going to give this guy a pass. I'm like, hey, 8 o'clock is fine. I have stuff I can do. So at 8 o'clock, he did call me. That was a surprise. And he said, well, now it's going to have to be 9 before I can get there. And I said, that's fine. And he said, well, I'll call you when we're leaving. And he hung up on me. He didn't even say goodbye. He sounded like he was in a big rush. Maybe his girlfriend had driven up in her car. I don't know. So at 9 o'clock, I get a text message that said, no, it was 9:05. I get a text message that said, hey, meaning I'm supposed to think that that's his daughters or maybe his mother. I don't know. Hey, we're just leaving and I'm tired. So I don't know if he's coming or not. I don't know what's going on. He never shows up. He never texts me anymore. I never hear from him for the rest of the night. The next day, that's when I texted him and was like, this is what I was trying to prevent. Like, no thanks. I just had, in the last couple of years, I've had, my husband and my mother pass away. So I know that even when you're making arrangements and even when you're sad and grieving, you can still maintain some responsibilities and still communicate with people that you had plans with, for instance. So he just, and it didn't sound like he was that sad or that much in grief. He might have been, but he sounded perfectly normal. It wasn't like he was falling apart and crying, when I talked to him or whatever. So it was just pretty flaky, and who knows if he was even telling me the truth, because he was trying to keep me on the line. And then guess what happened? For the first time, I guess I'm lucky, for the first time that anybody ever did this, he asked me for money. So he didn't even answer the last text when I said this is what I was trying to prevent. And, my time is valuable also. And I just need some communication. He never answered any of that. He just waited a day or so and then asked me for money. And the text that came in didn't make a lot of sense. It was probably had voice texted it and it didn't pick up right. So it was kind of herky jerky sounding. And a friend that I was with said, oh, that's probably not for you. That was probably meant for somebody else. And I said, no, it was for me. He's asking me for money. And I just typed in what? And then he texted back, just disregard that. I'm like, okay, well, all right, good. And then a little bit later, while I was driving, I got another text popped up, and it said, Each of the brothers, of which there are at least three, each of the brothers needs to come up with $8,000, and I'm about $1,500 short. Now, if there are three brothers and they each have to come up with 8,000, that's a minimum of $24,000. Having just buried two people, I know that you do not have to spend $24,000 in a little country town to bury your uncle, if that was even true. Who knows? Maybe the reason he wanted me to hang on was because he knew eventually he was going to ask me for money. I don't know. My friend who was catfished for over $1 million, I'm quite sure that that's what she would think. That would be her take on it. So the point is that during that whole time, I was like, this guy, something's going on. The things that he was doing and things that he was saying to me just didn't add up. And you know that old saying, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's a duck. And I should have known that from the beginning. And it was a great learning experience that it's not being too judgmental when you see red flags and you know what to do. I never wanted to be judgmental, and I thought it'd be nice to give people the benefit of the doubt, but that sketchy communication, the things not adding up, the always changing the arrangements, the canceling, the moving them around, all that was red flags that culminated in being asked for money. So from now on, I'm not going to call it judgmental. I'm going to call it smart when I read those red flags, because so far they've always been true. The other experience that really was the icing on the cake. Oh, wait, one thing I forgot to tell you. So when he asked me for money, I wrote back, all I wrote back was one sentence: please lose my phone number. And then I blocked him. So I couldn't see if he responded, and I didn't really care. But when I went on my computer, because they're all linked to each other, to record a previous podcast, I saw that I had an unread text message. So I scrolled through my text messages and saw it was from him, because it doesn't get blocked on my computer. So I guess it doesn't get blocked on all your devices. And you know what he wrote? This shows you how deep our connection was. He wrote, LOL, okay. Quack, quack. The other experience was the last one I had before I completely deleted my profile. Was somebody matched with me and then asked me, proceeded to immediately ask me, are you interested? And I said, well, yeah. And aren't you? I mean, isn't that why you're on the dating app? And isn't that why we connected with each other or matched with each other? And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he said, well, are you interested? I'm like, well, sure. So, and I said, so what's next? And he said, well, dinner and drinks. And I'm like, okay. And knowing how the woman has to lead these guys along most of the time, like 99% of the time, I said, okay, well, when would you like that to be? And he said, because that was probably on a Friday or something, he said, well, let me know your availability for Saturday. No, that was on a Thursday. Let me know your availability for Saturday. I said, okay, I am free Saturday night. He then sent me a text about his perfect woman or something. It was a little hard to understand. And then that was the last I heard from him until the next morning, Saturday morning, which, remember, he had asked me my availability for Saturday because he wanted to do dinner and drinks. He sent me a good morning, have a blessed day. So I just calmed down there for a second. Finally, I wrote to him later in the day when I gave him a couple hours to see if he was going to step up, which I would have only agreed to go out on a date because we had mentioned it the day before. If somebody asked me out on a date for that day, I've learned to say no. I have other plans, and I'll explain why. So I wrote him and said, "You asked me my availability for today, and I told you I was free tonight, but you didn't make any solid plans. So what is it that you guys do? Do you just collect women to see which one you're going to think is the best and then make plans with that person? Goodbye." I think some men collect women because this is not the first time this has happened, where somebody asks me if my availability, I tell them that I'm available on the day they ask about, and yet they never step up. So I get the feeling personally, I don't know if this is true, but that they're just sort of collecting women, collecting options, and then they're going to choose what they actually want to do. So goodbye online dating. And the last thing I want to say is that I was going to do a podcast entitled "The Reason I'm Still Single." And I was going to tell you what the story I'll tell you now. It's just a little. When I was in New York, I matched with somebody, and he, after I don't know, a couple nice texts back and forth, he sent me a text describing in detail what he wanted to do to my body. Oh, ew. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm still single, because there are so many guys out there like that. Now, my feeling is about online dating is that maybe the guys that are on there, the reason they're on there is because there's some thing about their lives that causes the women that are around them that they see, or that they know in real life, not online, that makes those women not want to respond to them, not want to date them. They can't seem to get a date with the people they actually know. Because as far as I know, there's a lot of women who would love to go out on dates, but how these guys say, well, there's nobody around, I don't have anybody to ask, I don't know. I'm like, how can that be? There's women everywhere that I know who are looking to find the one. So I'm thinking maybe it's the nature of the guys that go online, that there's something in their lives that just doesn't work. Like I said before, they're 55 and they're living with their mother, or they're 60 and they don't have a full-time job, or whatever it is, or they're living in the back of their garage. I've met one guy like that, because they've had all their properties that they own foreclosed on. So there's some reason that they can't get a date in regular life, and they have to go online and see what they can catch. So after those last experiences, and just let you know, if somebody doesn't really want to kiss you, that's a red flag. Because here's what I think, that if they don't kiss you, then they probably can get away in their mind with thinking they're not really cheating when they do when they really do have a girlfriend or a wife. But if they just hug you, then it's maybe in their minds not really cheating, because something is really off if a guy who's interested in you doesn't want to kiss you. I know that for sure. That's a big red flag. Anyway, so I have deleted all my profiles. I have disappeared from the online dating world, and I'm on to my next adventure, which I'll tell you about in my next podcast. This is Mary Beth Rosebrough. In today's podcast, I explained some more about red flags and how those giant, big, waving red flags cause me to withdraw from the online dating world altogether. So goodbye to online dating and on to new things, new ways to discover who I really am, to rediscover that girl and those dreams inside of me. Please come along for the journey. If you would like to connect with me, please find me on Facebook at Rediscover Podcast, or on Instagram at RediscovHER, or under my name, Mary Beth Rosebrough. Signing out for now. See you next time. This is Rediscover.